Welcome to Unshackled Living.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here with Mauricio, who is Chief Sales Officer and co-founder of Ledn. Mauricio's got a complicated last name for me, so we'll let him say it. But Mauricio, thanks so much for being with me here today.
My pleasure, Jared. Thanks for having me.
So Mauricio, let's just get into the beginning of kind of your sovereignty story. How did you start thinking about or paying attention to this idea of sovereignty?
Oof, it's a great question. And I have to credit my dad for this. So my dad has always been a serial entrepreneur. And my parents, or my father in particular, is the son of two Italian immigrants who left Italy in the 40s to get to Venezuela. My dad was born in Venezuela. And as an immigrant, my parents, or my dad's family, came from a place where they lost everything. And we are not the first generation to have been made false promises by governments. Many governments have promised in years past to our grandparents, our great-grandparents, this idea of, don't worry about your health. It's going to be free if you pay your taxes. Don't worry about your retirement. We'll take care of you when you're older. Don't worry about education. We will take care of that too. Just it all comes part of your taxes. And that for a period of time, that they make it such that it's believable for you, right? Like you start gaining trust and you say, oh, look at these giant amounts of money that are putting set aside for the pensions. Oh, look at these beautiful hospitals that are being built. Oh, look at these great schools that are being built for my children. But over time, you learn that there is no free lunch. Nothing can be free. We are not, by virtue of having worked, if everybody that had worked should have been entitled to a money for the rest of their lives until they die, humanity would look very different, right? Like if everybody was, if having access to a hospital was a God-given right, nobody would be sick. We would have hospitals everywhere. The point is, taking care of yourself when you're not a productive member of the economy costs something. It costs something to whoever's paying it. None of that is free. Your pension isn't free. Somebody pays for your pension, right? That hospital that you're going to, that hospital is not free. Somebody pays for your hospital. And same with education. So my parents already came from a place where all these social contracts had been violated for them. So they knew not to trust them, right? And so when I was growing up, many of my friends in school, their parents were teachers, doctors, lawyers. And these were the people that were always following the rules, right? Like save up in your government currency, put a little bit away for a rainy day, put it in a government bank, earning nothing % year over year. Trust your pension. We got you. Don't worry about it. Trust the healthcare system. When you need it, we'll be there. And what I saw with these people who were following the rules is they were getting crucified economically. They were getting left behind. Their savings were evaporating. When they reached retirement, their pensions weren't enough to buy popcorn. You know, their pension that should have been thousands of dollars had the economic purchasing power of a can of Coke.
Really?
Venezuelan pensions right now, like $30. That's your pension.
Yeah.
Because it's set at government currency that fails. Go try to get a bed in a Venezuelan hospital. They're free. Go get it. They don't exist. So all I'm trying to say is my journey started in understanding that most of these social safety nets were just a mirage. They weren't really ever going to work in practice. So my dad always operated from a point of view that you are the only person that's going to help yourself. You and your family and your extended family. And before governments were supposed to take care of your every need, as they claim to do today, that role used to be with your extended family. If you got sick, you had an uncle who was a doctor. You'd go see your uncle, you know? If you needed somebody to take care of your kids because you had to go on a work trip, you would leave it with your grandparents.
Right.
Right? Like if your parents were getting old and sick, they would move in with you. Right? We wouldn't ship them off to a retirement home, government funded. Right? Like, and so in my upbringing, I was taught from a very young age to always be self-sufficient, to not be depending on someone else. In fact, it was so much so that my father, he wasn't like apprehensive, but he didn't like any of his kids to work for someone else. He wanted all of his kids to start their own business, because only then are you really your own boss.
Right.
Even when you have a job, in many ways, you depend on that paycheck. Right? You're contributing to that pension. And there's a risk you can fall into that comfort, that fake comfort of, I don't have to worry about anything. Because it's also very comfortable, Jared, to think that someone's out there trying to, that's got your back, and you no longer need to worry about any of these things. It's a beautiful idea to put in your mind.
Yeah, that safety net, right?
So my journey started really from a very young age with my parents basically demonstrating to me, or at first they told me, but then I saw through experience what happened to the people that did rely on these safety nets, only to find these safety nets were either gone or not working as they were supposed to be working when they were told that that's what they were going to get, right? So that was when my journey around sort of self-sufficiency or sovereignty started. And I think, my parents actually built us into some very well-rounded sovereign individuals. One of the things my parents did from a very young age is they got us an additional passport to the Venezuelan passport. That is a huge strategic advantage from a sovereignty perspective.
Right.
Because you no longer now depend on one country. You can become dependent on things without even knowing, right? Like most of us are all dependent on one passport. We just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
Your country just hasn't gone into shambles for you to test how good that passport is. Right? And the same goes for your own personal finances. The same goes for your education. What type of education are you going to allow and pursue? So that was really the sort of origins of my journey. And I can wax poetic on, when I found Bitcoin and how that idea kind of got strengthened over time.
Was your family's immigration into Canada and leaving Venezuela based on kind of the issues that you're raising? Was that really the foundation in which they left?
So I came to Canada by myself, and I'll tell you why that happened. So again, on the idea of sovereignty and your family being your safety net. So when Venezuela started falling off a cliff, when the dictator came in, Chavez, my dad's first instinct was, I want to get my family out of this because I think this is going to be a short-term issue. So we moved to Florida. We lived 2 years in Miami.
Oh, okay.
But at the time, it was very hard for my father to earn bolívares and spend dollars. He was doing his best, but man, God bless him, he just couldn't keep it up. And so after 2 years in Florida, we were forced to return to Venezuela. But I had already gotten a taste of freedom. And Venezuela was still, in fact, the Chavismo disaster was just picking up steam rather than going away.
Right.
So I still had a willingness to be out of the country. My youngest brothers didn't want to. They didn't want to leave as much. I did. I was already kind of intoxicated with the values and ideas of freedom that I had kind of been exposed to in the U.S. So I said, I want to go. Right? And my parents, like many other families did back then, made an effort, because it wasn't cheap to send someone abroad. So my parents made a big effort to send me away with the idea that if Venezuela fell apart, I was going to help pull my family out of the disaster. I was the safety net. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So I went to Canada. I did my university here, my career, and I started building my business here. And lo and behold, my father was one of my first supporters of my business, of our business, of Ledn. He did very well because of it. My whole family was a supporter. In fact, my brother works with me. Right? So I did become the safety net Right. In addition to Bitcoin then came in, and a big part of our safety net was the fact that we found Bitcoin and basically invested or bet our lives and our careers on it because of what it did for us in Venezuela. It allowed us to exercise our right to self-sovereignty. My brother actually had to flee the country in Venezuela because the regime raided his mining facility, and he was only able to do so because he could take his Bitcoin across the border and use the savings in Bitcoin to rebuild.
Can you tell us a little bit about that Bitcoin story?
Sure. So in 2013 in Venezuela, well, maybe let's backtrack a second just to kind of paint a picture of how we got here. So Chavez, the Venezuelan, what many people know as the sort of charismatic dictator that Venezuela had from 99 to 2013, he came into power in 99. He died in 2013. And when you hear about Venezuelan hyperinflation and the migration crisis, that all started after 2014. And I'll tell you why. It was because when Chavez died, Venezuelans knew that the will of the people was to return to democracy. And we held this massive election to choose a new president because the guy had died. And many Venezuelans, millions of us, flew down to vote to get our country back.
Oh, wow.
And I was there. I voted. I remember the feeling exactly of the moment I landed on the plane. People started chanting the Venezuelan national anthem. I went to the polls. I was ecstatic. It was a sea of white, which was the color of the opposition, of the return to democracy.
Okay.
The whole country expected us to go back to democracy. And as it happens in many corrupt regimes, the exit polls, information on the exit polls goes dark at around 7. It was the pro-democratic forces leading by a country mile. Reporting goes dark. At 9 p.m., official results come out. Landslide for the regime.
Unreal.
We went to the protests the next day. I know I took my fair share of tear gas, rubber bullets, etc. And then the regime basically started shooting real bullets at the protesters.
Wow.
And that's when I saw the first person die at a protest, somebody I knew. And that night, my parents sat me down and said, "You're leaving. You're going back to Canada." So after this election, people started fire selling all of their assets. It was clear that democracy has gone to never return, at least to the foreseeable future. So Venezuelans started panicking. And so they start panic selling everything, their assets, their currency, and they start massively migrating. They just basically start fleeing. It's like the ship is sinking and everybody just wants to get out of the ship, right? And that causes hyperinflation and the mass migration crisis that we're seeing, or that led to 9 million people exiting Venezuela out of a country of 30 million.
Wow.
So 2014, this is in the middle of all of this, in the middle of the ship sinking and everybody looking for ways out. My younger brother graduates from university and he didn't want to leave. He was very rebellious. He was very principled. He just wanted to stay. He wanted to build something in the country. But my father, my family was adamantly against it. They were like, please leave for your own sake. He didn't want to. So he comes to my dad with an ultimatum and says, "Dad, I'm going to build this business, whether you support me or not. If you don't support me, that's fine. I'll leave the house. I'll sell my car. I'll do my own. But I just wanted to give you a heads up." My dad sends me an email that night, says, "Your brother seems to be pretty serious about this. I've never read about this. Can you tell me what this is?" And he sends me the Bitcoin white paper. And my brother's idea was to start mining Bitcoin in Venezuela. Venezuela had huge capital controls at this time. It was when the government. So when Maduro steals the election, right, and everybody starts fleeing, everybody starts selling their bolivares, trying to buy dollars to get them out of the country. This causes the exchange rate to skyrocket. And a currency's exchange rate is like a report card for the government, right? Like if it crashes, the government's very bad, right? The government's doing things that are very bad. But the funny part is that the government is who determines the official exchange rate. So they fix it. They fix it to an arbitrary low amount. So what people do is they'll say, "Well, government, you sell me dollars at this fixed rate because I don't want to get my assets to get debased. Your currency is basically free falling, and you're asking me to hold my savings in this thing. I'm not going to do that. Sell me the dollars. The government says, no, illegal. Can't sell you dollars. Don't have enough. So then you go and you say, well, what can I do? I'm going to go buy dollars in the peer-to-peer markets, unregulated by the government.
Yeah.
That's where the true exchange rate lies. A free willing person trading dollars for bolivares. So that exchange rate is 5 times what the government says it's worth. Not only that, but if you get caught buying dollars in the peer-to-peer market, the government says, oh, that's an illegal purchase. Those are my dollars. Bye-bye savings. And so they try to inject a bunch of fear for you to exit the currency into dollars through the parallel markets. But people obviously are not dumb. They're saying, okay, well, you're not letting me buy dollars. I'm going to go buy a car with this extra money because I can reprice the car tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, right? And so then the government starts saying, you can only have one car.
Oh, wow.
And then people are like, well, I'm going to go buy rubber tires that don't expire. We basically get pushed into the barter system.
Yeah.
You start storing your value in non-perishables and bartering with other people. I remember my mom getting phone calls from the butcher, where she got her chicken, and the butcher was like, Chavela, I got some whole chickens here today. I can put away a few for you. And mom would be like, oh, would you take some sugar for it? I got like 10 kilos here that I just got. And the guy was like, oh, amazing. And so we were trading literally sugar for chicken, chairs for beans. Like it was completely crazy.
It's like the dark ages.
Correct. And so my youngest brother starts mining Bitcoin in this environment. And through Bitcoin mining, you can take electricity, which was heavily subsidized, and produce uncensorable, unseizable freedom money that cannot be taken from you and can be sold in the open global markets with no restrictions or limitations or capital controls. It is basically a way of earning freedom money through electricity and a computer. And so my brother starts mining. He starts doing fantastic. He finds a glimmer of hope in an otherwise decaying country. My dad is over the moon. My dad starts mining. Then my other brother starts mining. Then they get some equipment from my mom. They got a few computers from my mom. Then my cousins start mining. Then my aunts start mining. And so everybody starts mining.
And is this like at home, like at residential scale, or are they getting like warehouses and stuff like that?
So this isn't, and so there's both, right? There's at homes, the most common machines were GPU rigs because they're quieter and not as loud, and they don't produce as much heat. But we had, little rooms and like commercial sites or even offices where we had we'd taken out a closet and put a few fans in and put 8 ASICs in there. And It was very artisanal. But the point is Venezuelans found a way to getting freedom money in the context of very, very little freedom. And they start doing very, very well. But that all, like anything in a communist regime, it's finite. It has an end to it. And about 3 years later, then in December 2017, the witch hunt against the miners began. So the Maduro regime started going against the miners, who were innocent because there was no rules making mining illegal or preventing any mining from happening. But he gave basically a carte blanche to his death squads to go seize equipment from miners so that they could operate the equipment themselves. So he used it as like a way of compensating his death squads off the books. And many facilities started getting raided. We are among the first ones to get raided. And they raided our facilities at a time where my middle brother was the only one in the country. And he was being extorted and threatened. They were telling him that if he didn't show up with $25,000 and gave up his equipment, they would throw him in jail. We tried to go through the real legal means and sort of try to figure out through our friends if this was real, if anyone could help us. Quickly, we learned this was really like a rogue death squad. And in a place where there's a vacuum of justice, those people operate with, they can just go. Venezuela has a 99% of 99% non-conviction rate for murders. So you could pretty much get out in a four-way stop in a main street in a city and like point blank shoot somebody, kill them across, in the car next, and you can just get back in your car and drive, and there's a 99% shot nothing happens to you.
Really? Wow.
That's how much impunity is in Venezuela, how bad it is. So anyway, my brother, after he realizes who he's negotiating with and that there's no real way out, he makes a decision to leave the country. And he had to drive to the Venezuelan border in the middle of the night with fuel shortages everywhere, wanted by a rogue death squad with your wife and 2 kids. And the only thing you can take with you is your Bitcoin, because he couldn't take his house. His bank balances were worthless. His business was, basically worthless. And that was, my brother was able to move, was able to escape, was able to bring his Bitcoin with him. He was able to use his Bitcoin to, rebuild and reestablish his family in in the free world. Thank God we had that second passport that I mentioned at the top of the call, which is my parents had gotten to us with a lot of foresight. And I was already a big believer in Bitcoin before then, but that moment, that escape was really what cemented my, radical belief in Bitcoin as freedom money.
So when this happened, and your family then is, living in Western countries, and I guess has this kind of perceived level of sovereignty, your family goes from like Italy to Venezuela, and then into Canada, and now in Canada we're in an interesting situation where it's like, well, sovereignty might not be as real as we once thought it was, especially around maybe land ownership. We've seen government intervention in all kinds of ways. It almost seems like you're running from these regimes that are kind of constantly on your family's tail. I mean, it must make you think, wow, there really is no safe place. But there sure is this perception in Western countries that we have a high level of sovereignty, and that some of this conversation we're having is really an issue in developing countries. Obviously, Venezuela being an extreme case. How do you feel about that?
So this is a very good question, and something that I've put a lot of thought into. I think we in Western countries, I say we because, I consider myself as a member of sort of, I espouse Western freedom and liberty beliefs and sovereignty beliefs. And again, I'm not trying to speak about the West as a blanket term or, everybody's in the same, but it's broadly pretty similar. I think we become victims to this belief that we've reached the end of history, right? Like, meaning, it was just our grandparents that had to leave war-torn communist countries to find freedom in another country. That'll never happen again. A good country will never turn bad again. There will never be a government that tries to overstep their boundaries and overly control society to the point where everybody wants to leave. That won't happen again. The only guaranteed thing about history and time and life is change. And I think we're doing ourselves a big disservice as a sovereign individual. You should never assume that you've reached the end of your evolution in the search for freedom. I grew up in a country that, I'll give you my grandma's example. My grandmother left Italy after World War II. Again, Italy was, Italy in the early 1900s was a massive economy. It was great. It was presumably a phenomenal place. Europe before World War I and World War II was arguably the place to be.
Yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden a war starts, and you have to decide, do I take my family to freedom and allow them and take a big risk by leaving my comfort zone and everything I've learned and built to give them a chance at freedom? Or do I stay here and get intoxicated with discomfort and see what happens? That will never stop. Radical people can come into power in any country at any time. That's what I learned from Venezuela. So whether you're in Canada, the UK, the US, you should always have your spidey senses up, because you should never assume that something that's good today couldn't turn bad tomorrow. You need to guard and protect your freedoms and your liberties. And one of the issues I have with some of these Western societies is that they take their democracy as a given, as this God-given right. I've come from a place right now in Venezuela. If you like a post about Maduro's extraction and you get pulled over in one of these checkpoints, they disappear you.
Oh, wow.
You go missing. I have friends back home petrified. They don't like any posts. They don't post anything. And when I ask them, it's because, they took away so-and-so because they saw a post that he liked.
Wow.
They took away so-and-so because she shared X. Freedom of speech is not a God-given right. Does that make sense? Like we need to defend that. I'm very worried when I look at Western societies where they're trying to block you from saying certain things or having certain debates.
Right.
And I see these are problems in the UK, in Canada, Brazil, Venezuelans didn't have access to X. They still probably don't via VPNs. So all I'm trying to say is it's a constant journey. The journey to sovereignty is a constant journey, and your sovereignty will always be at risk if you don't continuously evaluate, your surroundings. And so I joke, that I've escaped bad governments more than once, right? And they're not going to get me, right? Like I'm hypersensitive and hyper aware of any little thing that I think could challenge my sovereignty.
Right.
And I always want to keep my options open, because if you become too reliant on any one thing, you can become a victim. You become vulnerable. And vulnerable people are rarely sovereign.
So how does Bitcoin give people in, supposedly Western developed countries sovereignty in a place where it's not really apparent it's not traditionally apparent, and it's not like from a mass population perspective, it's not apparent that I need more sovereignty to most people, So how does Bitcoin offer that solution?
Because Bitcoin allows you to have total control of your assets without intermediaries. And what do I mean by that? For example, if you wanted to send some money to your friends in Venezuela, if you had friends in Venezuela or in Russia, and you wanted to send them money, typically, before Bitcoin, the only way you could do so was through banks. Banks are controlled by the sending country and the receiving country. And on top of those two countries, there's a big layer of coordination called SWIFT. And there's clearance between central banks for different currencies. So if you wanted to send money to somebody in Venezuela 20 years ago, you'd have to ask your bank's permission, the central bank's permission, SWIFT to process it. Then you got to ask the receiving bank's permission, the receiving central bank, and then that would go to the receiving retail bank. 5 different people had to authorize your transaction. And very likely, one of those would say no.
Yeah.
With Bitcoin, there's no one you need to ask for permission for. With Bitcoin, I could send you Bitcoin right now. No bank, no central bank, no intermediary would ever be needed. Right? You could hold that Bitcoin, Jared, without having to have that Bitcoin in a bank account. You could hold it yourself. On or off, like completely offline too. You don't even need a device for it. You just need to memorize 12 words. So that gives you sovereignty on money. And it's impossible to have sovereignty. If you don't have sovereignty of your own money or your own assets, how do you have sovereignty on your own mobility? How do you have sovereignty on your own education?
Right.
And if you don't have money that no one can take from you, how do you ensure you're never going to be afraid to say what you believe is right? if your money is all in held by a particular bank or entity that you know that is protected or associated with a government that's the government du jour, and you don't believe that government's doing something right, you might be in a position where you might question whether to voice your opinion or not, because you might put your money and your savings at risk. That is the wrong incentive. So by having Bitcoin in your own self-custody, knowing that you can take it anywhere you want, send it to anyone you want, do whatever you want with it, that's empowering. That empowers you to say, you don't like what I say? Fine, I'll go say it somewhere else. I have the means to do so. You can't keep me here. Right? Oh, Iran is fighting for justice. We're blocking all transfers into Iran because we're buddies with the regime. And you have a relative out there fighting on the streets telling you, please, Jared, send me $100.
Yeah.
I'll take Bitcoin. What are you going to do? Not send them $100? Because your government said so? Is that being sovereign? Right? So Bitcoin gives you the ability to not have to ask for anyone's permission. That, if you don't have financial sovereignty, it's very hard to have any other element of sovereignty. You know how to control a society, you need to have a monopoly on justice. I don't know if you've read that thesis where first comes the monopoly of justice. Without it, you can't really have a set of laws because you can't enforce on the laws. And then once you have the set of laws, you can create an economy. Like you can create an economy. And then when there's an economy, there's excess capital and you can create capital markets. So it's a tower. But at the bottom of that tower is the monopoly on violence. If you don't have the monopoly of violence, you can't stack the other values on top of it, right? If I can't be financially independent, how can I be physically independent? How can I pay for the things I need to not depend on daddy government? So that allows me to be physically and economically independent. If I'm economically independent, I now have freedom of speech because my economic independence is not at the helm or the risk of somebody that wants to control what I say or do. So to me, I see the financial freedom layer as the bottom of the pyramid to build some sovereignty. If you don't have that, everything you build on top of it, like, you know, what good is it to be able to say what you want if you can't, pay to move your family away to a different city because you think they're a risk? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. No, that's great. And I think that's really helpful, like that foundational principle that if you don't have kind of that financial independence, then you can't really obtain sovereignty or freedom from the system in these other ways which you might deem important.
100%. That's a very nicely summarized way. I'm very verbose.
So tell me, one of the challenges that people face, of course, they hold Bitcoin is, I don't want to sell my Bitcoin because I think it's going to appreciate over time, but I want to buy things or I want to interact in the economy without having to do so. And Mauricio, I've enjoyed listening to you on a few other podcasts over the last year. And learning about what you offer at Ledn. I think it's a really important aspect of a sovereign economy is, how can we hold our assets? So tell us what you guys do at Ledn.
For sure. So as I mentioned, my family started mining Bitcoin in 2015. And when we found Bitcoin, oh boy, were we happy. And we wanted to keep as much of it as we could because Bitcoin is power, fiat is weakness. So we were earning Bitcoin from the machines, but part of the economic reality of living in a fiat system is that you have fiat expenses. So every so often we'd have to pay for our electricity bills. We have to pay for our equipment upgrades. We have to pay for new equipment coming in, power supplies, networking equipment. And every time we had to do that, the only assets we had or were generating was the Bitcoin. So we were selling Bitcoin to pay, we were converting Bitcoin to fiat to pay for these things. And we were never able to basically, we were forced to sell Bitcoin when we didn't want to. Sometimes the bill came due at the end of the month. Bitcoin price was crap, but we didn't really have an option other than to sell it at that crappy price to pay for our bills, right? And funny enough, one of the interesting things about the Venezuelan experience was that as the Bolivar was collapsing, the Bolivar was in free fall. I did very, very well shorting the Bolivar So shorting the Bolivar using the dollar. So to do that, I would borrow Bolivares from my bank, and I would use those Bolivares to buy dollars in the peer-to-peer markets. And the banks were lending me the Bolivares at 34%.
34%.
Yeah, but inflation was 1,000,000%.
Right. That's
So
just
for
a crazy
me,
number.
I was taking everything I could get at 30%, and the banks were the banks loved me because I was like one of the few people borrowing that had decent credit quality. I'd paid back all my loans. So the bank was like, "Yeah, man, well, how much do you want?" And I was like, "As much as you can give me." Right? And so I would take this money at 30% in Bolivares, and I would invest it in dollars that were appreciating at like 1,000%. So I would just wait, and like a year later, I would sell 1/100th of the dollars I had purchased, and I would clear my debts.
Yeah.
And I would do it all over again, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So I had already become enamored with this idea of borrowing a weak currency, having a loan in a weak currency, and investing that into a hard asset. So when I started getting Bitcoin, when we started earning Bitcoin, our first natural thinking was, when we need fiat, let's just use the Bitcoin as collateral and get a loan for it. It'll be great because Bitcoin's going to go up over time. Our dollar is worth less every year. So our debt actually is easier and easier to pay. And our collateral goes higher in value. It's a virtuous cycle, not unlike a mortgage in the US. You're borrowing dollars and you're buying this ginormous fixed asset, which is the house. So you're short dollars, long tangible physical assets. To my surprise, when Venezuela, it wasn't surprising. I understood why nobody would give us a Bitcoin backed loan in Venezuela. There's never rarely a solution to your problems in Venezuela. But when I started setting my mind in Canada with Adam, my best friend from university, we found we had the same issue. So we went to a few financial entities. Keep in mind, this is back in 2017.
Yeah.
And we were asking people for loans using Bitcoin as collateral, and the answers we got ranged anywhere from "you're absolutely insane" to Bitcoin's not an asset. That one was a very common one. Who would ever do that? You guys are out for lunch. It was at that point that Adam and I said, they don't get it. We should do it. And so Ledn was built to do something very, very simple. Give people the option of borrowing dollars using their Bitcoin as collateral. That's our flagship product. As our name suggests, that's what we've been doing since 2018. We haven't pivoted once. You know, many people hear about, oh, this company's doing loans now. This company's doing loans now. Where were they 7 years ago when we launched, right? They're doing it now because they see number signs and their eyes light up. But we've also learned from this industry that being a lender in a up and to the right market, anybody can look great. But lending is about integrity and what happens how do you deal with volatility and market uncertainty? How do you deal with the downside? We all know what happens when things go up. Everybody can be a great lender when things are up and to the right. But it's very important that you understand who you're trusting that Bitcoin to, and are they keeping it safe? Because many companies could look like they have the right logos and they shake the right hands. They have the most sexy apps. They lure you with these fantastic rates, just fantastic rates. And then you come in only to learn that they were doing what they said they were going to be doing. They were rehypothecating your Bitcoin. They didn't have proof of reserves. They took a lot of risks because they wanted to make that extra dollar by supporting that extra shitty token. We've never done that. We've always been the boring, sort of very conservative lenders. And we were we're the first ones to ever do proof of reserves, even though you can't sell proof of reserves, right? Like it's not a product people pay me for. It's just the right thing to do.
Right.
And so that's what Ledn does. Ledn lets you borrow dollars using your Bitcoin as collateral. And that benefits you because borrowing is most often not a taxable event in most jurisdictions. So you don't have to pay capital gains. And also you get to keep the upside of the Bitcoin collateral. And there's no monthly payments.
What countries is this available in?
It's over 100 countries. So you can Google, I think the website is eligibility.
So I guess bottom line, a lot of places.
Most of the world.
Yeah, including Canada.
Including Canada. There's some provinces that we can't service, but we can service Ontario, we can service BC, We can service Alberta. We can service, I think most of them. Not Quebec, unfortunately, but we can service most Canadian jurisdictions. So anyone listening here can most likely access our loans.
And so what's the loan to value that you'll do? Like if I want to go buy a house, are you going to do an appraisal on the house? Are you going to say, okay, we'll give you, 80% of the value of the house, or how does that work?
Yeah, so Ledn only lends based on your Bitcoin collateral. So many people, and this is why a lot of Bitcoiners come to us. People listening to this, if you're a Bitcoiner and you're self-employed or you have your own business or you're a contractor, you go to the bank and you can have $1 million worth of Bitcoin and you say, I want to buy this $500,000 house. And the bank will say, great, give me your 3 last pay stubs, give me your credit number, give me the appraisal for the property, give me 3 reference letters,
your job letter,
this and that, and then the job letter, confirm your employment, blah, blah, blah. And the person will say, well, that's the thing. I don't have pay stubs because I have my own business. And then the bank will say, sorry, Jared, you're way too independent for us. We don't like that people with that much sovereignty. We're sorry. We want somebody that's dependent on a salary. We want somebody that absolutely we're taking our pound of flesh on their taxes, overly so. And if you're not that predictable and that controllable, Jared, you can't get sweet, sweet bank money. So what I'm trying to say here is banks are not asset-backed lenders. Banks are income-based lenders. You can have all the assets in the world. Go to a bank without income, they'll tell you can't borrow $1. At Ledn, your Bitcoin is your credit worthiness. We know you're good for it. We have the Bitcoin. That's all we care for. I don't look at your credit score. I don't look at your income. I don't look at your religion. I just want to make sure you can pass KYC and you have Bitcoin and you're in an eligible jurisdiction. That's true asset-backed lending. What that allows us to do is because your Bitcoin is just as good as my Bitcoin or my family's Bitcoin in Venezuela, you, Jared, in Canada, will get the same quality of service and the same rates as somebody in Colombia or Venezuela. So our loans start at 50% loan to value. And that holds true no matter where you go. Everybody gets the same, which is the beauty about our business. So if you want to borrow $1,000, you got to use $2,000 worth of Bitcoin as collateral. The funds come to you within hours. 4 to 6 hours is our average of funds reaching your account after you put the Bitcoin as collateral. There are no monthly payments for your loan. So you can keep the loan open for a whole year and you can repay at any time, but there's no obligation for you to make the monthly payments, monthly interest payments. And our loans start as low as $500 for you to test the service. Many people have never used a Bitcoin Bank loan. They don't know what it is. They don't want to use a big amount to test it. They want to see how it works. So you can do that at Ledn with $500. $1,000 worth of Bitcoin will get you to test the pipes. The loans go up to multiple millions. Like, people can have $20, $30 million in loans if they want, but it starts as low as 500.
And is your terms, do you have long-term loans that someone could have a realistic mortgage on their house for 25 years?
So we have our loans the rate is fixed for 12 months, but it can be refinanced or renewed at the end of the 12 months. Right. So we have clients that have had loans open for 5-6 years now, and they could just keep rolling the loan. No need to make any payments at the end of the 12 month. It rolls as if it was one continuous term. But the rate is fixed for 12 months because we also have to, we have duration in our rates, right? So we can never lock a rate for a client for longer than we can lock it, because then we start getting into maturity mismatches. Sure. So the reason our rates are capped at 12 months today is because that is the sort of visibility on the cost of capital we have. We are working on longer structures, which will allow us to offer people 2-year loans, 3-year loans, 4-year loans. But because our loans can be rolled and renewed, that's why so many Bitcoiners use them to buy houses. And many Bitcoiners have used our loans to buy property.
And so if I want $500, I give you $1,000 of Bitcoin. What if Bitcoin drops by 70%? Okay, so now you have only $300 of Bitcoin and I have $500 of your money.
Right.
Do I have to kick in some more Bitcoin?
So naturally, what you just said, we can't allow that to happen, right? Because we can never be in a position where we lent you 500 and your collateral, we allowed your collateral to go from 1,000 to 300 without doing anything, because then we are out $200, right? That's not the business we're in. So the business we're in is just making a delta between the interest rate we charge you and the interest rate we pay our institutional lenders.
Yes.
So the way the product works is I don't have your credit score, I don't have your income, I don't go on your credit record. So the only collateral I have is the Bitcoin, which means I have to make sure that I'm never letting it get to certain price levels. And as the price is dropping, I have to, it approaches the value I lent to you. So you left me $1,000, I lent you 500. When Bitcoin changes and the price gets to 700, I'll have to tell you, Jared, I need more Bitcoin, man, because if the value of the collateral you left me goes to 600 and starts skimming way too close to the one I lent you, I have to sell the Bitcoin so that I can make sure that I can repay the debt plus interest. I'll return any remaining Bitcoin after repaying the loan. I don't need it. I'm not trying to take it from you. All I'm trying to do is settle the debt and give you back the difference. So we are very upfront with our clients that for that reason, there may be the need for you to send more Bitcoin to the loan to keep it healthy. And we make that super simple. You can send it from external addresses. You can send it from your internal address. You can turn on a feature that does it automatically for you with the balances at Ledn.
Yeah.
So, and Canadian clients have some limitations around that feature because of some Canadian regulation. But if you call us or if you contact our team and you want to turn this feature on or figure out a way to best protect your loan, we're very happy to help you no matter where you are, even if you're Canada.
Yeah. Okay. So you have this kind of protection mechanism for a margin call that, allows the customer to kind of sleep at night.
Correct. Some other firms charge for that thing. We don't. We want you to feel safe, and auto top up comes standard if you want to turn it on.
Well, that's fascinating. And so when we look at the custody of that Bitcoin, and this is always the big concern, right? Okay, well, now Ledn has $1 million of my Bitcoin. What if Ledn disappears, or what if Mauricio is a scammer? How do we verify this, and what does that process look like so that I know that my Bitcoin's safe with you?
Yes, great question. So at Ledn, we only do custody loans. What custody loans means is that your Bitcoin collateral is always in custody. And that's in custody of either Ledn or one of our funding partners like Tether, who is an investor in Ledn as well. So just for everyone to know. There are two ways that we store or protect your Bitcoin. If Ledn is funding the loan, so if the dollars you're borrowing are coming from Ledn, either from our own balance sheet or deposits, we keep that Bitcoin at BitGo cold storage at all times. If we are drawing liquidity from one of our partners and we're pledging that Bitcoin as collateral to them, that Bitcoin remains in custody on chain at all times in an address that we can see. And it is legally ring-fenced from our partner's balance sheet, meaning the Bitcoin is Ledn's. It never forms part of Tether or anyone else that we're borrowing from's balance sheet. This is very important because that legal distinction is what makes the collateral not be part of their bankruptcy process should anything go wrong. If anything goes wrong in their partners, that's still Ledn's Bitcoin. Ledn can always repay the loan and claim back that Bitcoin, even in the rare case of bankruptcy. So we both ensure that the Bitcoin we use as collateral with any institutional partner is A, legally ring fenced, and B, in custody at all times that we can verify it and see it. How do we prove that to you? You don't just have to take it from me. At Ledn, we have a third-party accountant, US-based CPA called the Network Firm. Every single month, we produce a transparency report, meaning they come, they check that the Bitcoin is sitting at the addresses that we set that we're going to be sitting, and that we basically are accounting for every single client loan in our absolute numbers, in our total numbers. And it will show you also the size of our book. We are not shy about it. We're very proud of our business. So we share every month. We'll tell you how big is our book, what is the average collateralization ratio of the book, so that you can get a sense of how healthy the Ledn's book is. Yeah. So every month, every single one of our clients has access to that report. And every 6 months, we do a more thorough proof of reserves exercise. And those are verifiable by the client the client gets basically a hashed ID, and you can prove that we reported your exact numbers to the accountant, to the penny, and to the Satoshi. Why is that important? Because you can ensure that we're being honest about both assets and liabilities. Because if I just show the accountant a list of assets that I'm holding and I don't tell them how many assets I owe my clients, that looks great. But when you say I have $10 million and I owe my clients $9 million, okay, great, you're fine. I have $10 million, but I owe my clients 11. Ring all the alarms, right? And so this is why at Ledn deliberately we allow clients to verify both their deposits, their assets, and the accountant confirms we have more than what we owe our clients. And that ensures we're always being precise about, our numbers and our metrics.
Oh, that's great. That's helpful to understand that. Mauricio, just as we kind of wrap up here, where can we learn more about Ledn and any other quick concepts you want to throw out or ideas, please do.
So first, the Ledn is ledn.io. That is our main website. At Hodl with Ledn is our X or Twitter handle. Ledn.io, if anyone listening does, Instagram or any of the other stuff, I'm mostly on X, but at Hodl with Ledn on X. I'm at Cryptonomista on X as well. As far as closing thoughts, most of your audience is Canadian, right?
Global audience, but probably mostly Canadian.
Yeah, I would say, regardless of where you are, and this isn't targeted to Canada. This could be anywhere you're watching from. When I left Venezuela for the first time to go to Miami, my family and everyone else thought that, nothing bad could ever happen to Venezuela. This was just going to be some weird guy that was going to go away after 4 years. And when I got to Miami, I was met by a lot of Cuban people. And my Cuban friends, when I heard my story, they hugged me and they would say, "Get comfortable, man.
Oh, wow.
You're never going back."
Yeah.
And I would say to them, what happened to you guys will never happen to Venezuela. We have oil. We're mainland. 30 million people. You guys are just, you're just, you're just projecting your pain on me, right? Like, stop projecting, man. We're good. And boy, were they right. And right now you're seeing many Venezuelans out of the diaspora in places, in Western countries, hugging you like those Cubans hugged me. Don't dismiss them. That's all I would say.
That's powerful. Yeah, Mauricio, that's a pretty powerful statement. To bring that parallel from what you experienced in Venezuela to what the Cubans previously experienced, and then to say, hey, we might be going through some similar things, maybe in the UK, maybe in Canada, and many other places is pretty remarkable. Mauricio, I really appreciate you being with me here today. It's been an excellent interview, and I've certainly enjoyed hearing your story as quite a powerful lesson on how important sovereignty really is. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jared.